Marcus Hale stood in the briefing room, arms crossed, watching the holographic display flicker with tactical data. 20 years of engineering in the harshest corners of space had taught him one thing: trust your tools, not your partners. Partners got you killed. He'd learned that lesson on Helios Station when his entire team disappeared in a reactor breach while he was off shift. Since then, he worked alone. The door hissed open, and she walked in. Marcus felt his breath catch, not from attraction, but from sheer alienness. Velina moved like flowing water, her form humanoid but distinctly other. Her skin shimmered with a faint iridescence, pale blue shot through with veins of silver light. Her eyes were larger than human, a deep violet that seemed to see through walls. She wore robes that shifted colors with her movements, and her long fingers ended in delicate points. "You must be Engineer Hale," she said, her voice, melodic yet firm, carrying harmonics no human throat could produce. "I am Velina of House Sarath, diplomatic envoy," Marcus grunted. I read the brief. "We're heading to Epsilon 7 to fix the communication array so you can restart peace talks." "I fix things. You talk. We stay out of each other's way." Velina's eyes narrowed slightly. "I see your reputation for charm is well learned. However, this mission requires cooperation. The Krellian forces and the Terran rebels have been fighting for 6 months. Epsilon 7 is the only neutral ground left. If we fail, thousands die." "I don't need a speech," Marcus replied, gathering his gear. "I need to know you won't get in my way when I'm working. And I need to know you won't sabotage diplomatic protocol with your human bluntness," Velina shot back, a flash of something fierce in her violet gaze. Their transport ship was small, designed for speed rather than comfort. Marcus took the pilot's seat while Velina settled into the co-pilot position, her robes arranging themselves around her in an unsettling, almost living way. The journey to Epsilon 7 would take 18 hours through hostile space. For the first 6 hours, they barely spoke. Marcus focused on navigation while Velina reviewed diplomatic files, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. The silence grew heavy, almost oppressive. "Why do you hate working with others?" Velina asked suddenly, not looking up from her work. Marcus stiffened. "I don't hate it. I just prefer efficiency." "Efficiency," she repeated, finally turning to face him. "On Sarath, we believe isolation is the death of wisdom. We grow through connection, through understanding what is unlike ourselves." "Pretty philosophy," Marcus said flatly. "Doesn't hold up when someone makes a mistake and everyone dies." Velina was quiet for a moment. "You've lost people." "Everyone loses people in this line of work." Marcus adjusted their course, avoiding a debris field. "The difference is whether you learn from it or let it happen again, and you learn to trust no one." "I learned to trust myself." Before Velina could respond, alarms shrieked through the cockpit. The view screen lit up with incoming fire. 3 unmarked fighters, weapons hot, closing fast. "Strap in." Marcus shouted, throwing the ship into a hard dive. Velina's hands flew across her console, bringing up shields. The first volley hit their port side, shaking the entire vessel. Marcus pushed the engines to maximum, weaving through space as more shots screamed past. Velina worked with surprising speed, redirecting power to failing systems. "We can't outrun them." She called over the noise. "I know." Marcus yanked the controls, sending them spiraling toward a nearby asteroid field. "We're going to hide." "That's suicide." "You have a better idea?" Velina gritted her teeth and said nothing, gripping her console as Marcus dove into the tumbling rocks. The fighters followed, but Marcus's experience showed. He threaded through gaps that seemed impossible, using the asteroids as shields. One pursuer clipped a rock and exploded in a silent flash, but their luck ran thin. A shot caught their engine and warning lights flooded the cockpit. Marcus fought the controls as they spun out toward a large asteroid. "Brace," he yelled. They hit hard, the impact throwing them against their restraints. Metal screamed. Systems failed, then silence. Broken only by emergency lights and the hiss of a small hull breach somewhere aft. Marcus unbuckled, checking Velina. "You hurt?" She shook her head, violet eyes wide. "That was... You saved us." Not yet, Marcus replied, already moving toward the damage. Come on, we need to patch that breach before we lose atmosphere. As they worked together in the cramped, damaged ship, Marcus realized something unsettling. When Valina handed him tools with perfect timing, anticipating his needs, he didn't feel the usual irritation at having someone in his space. He felt something else entirely, something that terrified him more than any asteroid field. The breach took 4 hours to patch properly. Marcus worked with methodical precision while Valina assisted, learning quickly how to read his signals and movements. Her alien hands proved surprisingly dexterous with human tools. When they finally sealed the last panel, both were exhausted, floating in the zero gravity of the dead ship. The main engine is slag, Marcus reported, wiping sweat from his forehead. But I can get the backup thruster online. It'll get us to Epsilon 7, barely. Valina nodded, a strand of her hair like filaments drifting across her face. She brushed it back, and Marcus noticed how the silver light beneath her skin pulsed with her heartbeat. Everything about her was strange, yet there was a grace to her movements that he found himself watching. We should rest, she said softly. You've been working for hours. We don't have time for rest. Marcus, the way she said his name, with those harmonics in her voice, made him pause. You're exhausted. Even human stubbornness has limits. Rest for 1 hour. I'll monitor systems, something in her tone told him. Arguing was pointless. He found a corner and closed his eyes, expecting to lie awake as he usually did. Instead, exhaustion claimed him instantly. He woke to find Valina sitting nearby, her violet eyes thoughtful. You dream loudly, she said. Marcus sat up, uncomfortable. What's that mean? My people are partially empathic. Strong emotions bleed through. You were dreaming of fire and faces. People you couldn't save. Marcus's jaw tightened. Stay out of my head. I wasn't trying to intrude. Your pain is simply very loud. Valina moved closer, her expression softening. What happened to them? For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then, perhaps because they were stranded in a dead ship millions of miles from help, or perhaps because her alien eyes held no judgment, he spoke. Helios Station, 3 years ago. Reactor breach. I was off shift checking supply lines on the outer ring. My team was at the core when it went critical. 6 people. Dead in seconds. His voice went hollow. I should have been there. Should have caught the malfunction during my inspection the day before. Valina was silent, then reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, her cool fingers touched his hand. The contact sent a strange sensation through him, like gentle electricity. On Sarath, she said quietly, we have a saying. The survivor carries the light forward. Your team wouldn't want you to dim yourself with guilt. Don't know what they'd want. No, but I know what my brother would want. Her voice cracked slightly. He died in the first Krellian attack on our diplomatic convoy. I was supposed to be on that ship. I missed departure because I was arguing with the council about trade agreements. 16 diplomats died, including him. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, seeing past the alienness to the grief that mirrored his own. That's why you took this mission. Someone must build bridges, or we all drown in blood. Valina's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. But some nights, I hear his voice asking why I lived when he didn't. And what do you tell him? That I will make his death mean something. That I will not let his light fade into nothing. She squeezed his hand gently. Just as you keep your team's light alive by being the best engineer in the fleet. Something shifted between them in that moment. The walls Marcus had built so carefully developed their first cracks. He didn't pull his hand away. They worked together for the next 6 hours, restoring enough power to limp toward Epsilon 7. But now their conversation flowed easier. Valina told him about Sarath, a world of crystal forests and singing winds, where her people lived in harmony with resonant frequencies. Marcus found himself describing Earth, the feel of rain, the smell of soil. Things he hadn't thought about in years. Your world sounds beautiful, Valina said as they aligned the navigation systems. It was. I haven't been back in 8 years. Marcus frowned at a stubborn circuit. Hand me the small wrench. She did. their fingers brushing. The contact lasted a moment longer than necessary. Neither acknowledged it, but both felt it. "Why haven't you returned?" she asked. "Nothing there for me anymore. My family. We don't talk. They didn't understand why I left for space. I said I was running away. Were you?" Marcus paused, the wrench frozen in his hand. "Maybe. Or maybe I was running toward something. I just haven't figured out what yet." Valina smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, making her seem less alien and more simply ... beautiful. Perhaps that's what we're both doing. Running toward an answer we haven't found. "Deep thoughts for someone elbow deep in a thruster manifold," Marcus said, but there was warmth in his voice now. It contained multitudes. Valina replied with a musical laugh that resonated in his chest. When they finally got the backup thruster online, both were covered in grease and exhaustion. But as Epsilon 7 appeared on their sensors, battered and dark but intact, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope, and it terrified him almost as much as the feelings growing in his chest whenever he looked at his alien companion, because hope meant having something to lose again. And loss was something Marcus Hale knew far too well. Epsilon 7 was worse than expected. The station hung in space like a broken skeleton, half its modules dark, the central hub scarred by weapons fire. Marcus guided their limping ship into a damaged docking bay, manually engaging clamps since the automatic systems were dead. "Welcome to paradise," he muttered, inside. The station was a maze of emergency lighting and sealed corridors. Life support was functional, but barely. Marcus and Valina made their way to the communication center, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. "Where is everyone?" Valina asked, her voice hushed. "Probably hiding in the core sections. This place was evacuated except for essential staff." Marcus checked his scanner. "The comm array is 3 levels up. But we've got a problem. Only one." Despite the situation, Marcus almost smiled. "The main power relay is fried. We need to replace it before I can even start repairs. And those are stored in the emergency depot on the outer ring." Through the damaged sections, Marcus confirmed. They suited up in environment gear and ventured into the station's wounded areas. Here, the destruction was visceral. Walls torn open, exposing twisted metal. Frozen atmosphere hanging in crystalline clouds. Bodies of those who hadn't escaped in time, preserved in the cold. Valina stopped before one, a young Krellian soldier, frozen in mid-motion. So much death. For what? A border dispute? Resource claims? "Same reasons beings have always fought," Marcus said quietly. "Fear, pride, greed. My people believed we'd evolve past this, that joining the galactic community meant leaving such primitive impulses behind." Valina's voice carried bitter disappointment. "We were naive." They moved on, finally reaching the depot. Marcus located the power relay components while Valina kept watch. The electromagnetic storm they'd detected earlier was growing stronger, interference patterns dancing across their scanners. "We need to move," Marcus said, loading equipment onto a mag sled. "This storm hits, we'll be stuck here." They didn't make it. Halfway back, the storm crashed over the station like an invisible tsunami. Emergency doors slammed shut. Warning klaxons wailed. Marcus grabbed Valina's hand and pulled her into the nearest shelter. Small maintenance station, barely large enough for 2 people. The door sealed behind them with a hiss. Inside, a single emergency light cast deep shadows. The shelter's walls thrummed with electromagnetic interference. "How long?" Valina asked, their bodies pressed close in the confined space. Marcus checked his wrist display. "Storm this size? 3 days minimum." 3 days. Valina looked around the tiny shelter. "Well, at least the company is ... adequate." "High praise," Marcus said. But he was acutely aware of her proximity, the way her breath created small clouds in the cold air, how her eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. They rationed their supplies and settled in for a long wait. Hours passed. They talked to fill the silence, sharing stories of their worlds, their work, their dreams. Marcus found himself opening up in ways he never had before. "I wanted to be a musician once," he admitted during the second day, surprising himself. "Before engineering, played the piano. Why did you stop?" "Life. Practicality. My father said there was no future in art." Marcus shrugged, the old disappointment still present. "Maybe he was right. Maybe he was afraid," Velena said softly. "My people believe that art is not separate from science or diplomacy. It's the language of the soul. Without it, we're just machines performing functions." "Play something for me," Marcus said suddenly. "I don't have an instrument." "You're the instrument. You said your people live with resonant frequencies. Sing me something from your world." Velena hesitated, then began to sing. The sound was unlike anything Marcus had heard. Her voice produced multiple harmonics simultaneously, creating chords that seemed to vibrate in his bones. The song was wordless but spoke of longing, of crystal forests and starlit skies, of connections that transcended understanding. When she finished, Marcus realized tears were running down his face. That was ... couldn't find words. "A song my brother taught me," Velena said, her own eyes glistening. "I haven't sung it since he died." Without thinking, Marcus reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek, his rough, calloused hand against her smooth, cool skin. Time seemed to stop. They were inches apart, breathing the same air. And suddenly the tiny shelter felt even smaller. "Marcus," Velena whispered. And the way she said his name with all those harmonics made his heart race. "You shouldn't," he said, but didn't pull away. "No," she agreed. "Different species. Complicated. Impossible. Completely impossible." "Absolutely." Neither moved apart. Instead, slowly, carefully, Marcus leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers in a gesture that transcended their different origins. Velena's hand came up to rest against his chest. Over his racing heart, they stayed like that. Not kissing, but connected in something deeper. As the storm raged around them and the universe held its breath, on the third day, when the storm finally cleared and they emerged from the shelter, something fundamental had changed between them. They moved in sync, communicated with glances, protected each other instinctively. When a hull breach threatened to explosive decompress a corridor, Marcus shielded Velena with his body while she sealed the breach with emergency foam. When exhaustion nearly made Marcus miss a critical error in the power relay installation, Velena caught it, her hand on his shoulder steadying him. Finally, after 2 more days of exhausting work, the communication array came online. The holographic displays lit up. Contact with both sides of the conflict was restored. Velena stood before the console, ready to begin the talks that might end the war. She looked back at Marcus, and he saw everything they hadn't said reflected in her violet eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "What?" "For showing me that walls are meant to come down, not stand forever." Then she turned to her work, and Marcus watched her, knowing that whatever happened next, he was irrevocably changed. The engineer who trusted no one had learned to trust again, and more terrifyingly, to feel again. The peace talks lasted 3 weeks. Velena worked tirelessly, mediating between the Krellian commanders and Terran rebels, with a patience and wisdom that left Marcus in awe. He watched her transform conflicts into compromises, redirect anger into understanding, turn enemies into reluctant allies. Marcus supported the technical side, ensuring secure communications and maintaining the station's fragile systems. But mostly, he found himself watching her. The way she gestured with her graceful hands, how her skin's bioluminescence brightened when she was passionate about a point. The musical quality of her voice, even when she was frustrated. They stole moments together between sessions. Coffee in the empty observation deck, watching stars wheel past. Late-night repairs where conversation drifted from technical matters to personal confessions. Once Marcus found her crying in a dark corridor after a particularly brutal negotiation session where both sides had refused to budge. He held her without words, and she leaned into him, seeking comfort from his solid human warmth against her crystalline fragility. "I'm failing," she whispered against his shoulder. Every day, People die while they argue over words and borders. You're not failing. You're doing what no one else could. Marcus stroked her hair, marveling at its silk-soft texture. You're giving them a chance to be better than their worst impulses. Is a chance enough? It's everything. Without it, there's only more death. She pulled back to look at him, and he saw his own reflection in those violet depths. When did you become wise? Must be the company I'm keeping. They kissed then, finally, desperately. It was strange and awkward and perfect all at once. Her lips were cool, and the faint electrical sensation of her touch made his nerves sing. She tasted like starlight and foreign spices. When they broke apart, both were trembling. This is foolish, Velena breathed. Completely, Marcus agreed, then kissed her again. They knew it couldn't last. Different worlds. Different duties. Different biologies. But in that moment, none of it mattered. The breakthrough came during the 4th week. A young Krellian officer and a Terran civilian discovered they'd both lost children in the same battle. Their shared grief became a bridge. Slowly, painfully, the factions began to find common ground. Velena worked for 3 days straight, building on that foundation until finally, impossibly, both sides signed a preliminary ceasefire agreement. When it was done, Velena collapsed in Marcus's arms. Exhausted but triumphant. We did it, she whispered. You did it. I just kept the lights on. No. We did it. Together. But success brought a bitter pill. Both were recalled to their respective duties. Velena was needed on Sarath to present the peace framework to her council. Marcus received orders to report to a new posting on the frontier colony of New Anchorage. 3 sectors away from Sarath space, they stood in the docking bay. 2 ships waiting to carry them in opposite directions. I could request a transfer, Marcus said, hating how desperate he sounded. Find a posting closer to Sorath's space, and I could resign my position, become a freelance diplomat. Velena's hand rested against his chest. But we both know that's not who we are. You belong in space, building and fixing. I belong in council chambers, building and fixing in different ways. So this is it? Marcus felt something breaking inside him. We just walk away? Marcus. She cupped his face with both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Do you remember what you asked me in the shelter? Why I took this mission? To give your brother's death meaning. Yes, and I did that. But I also found something I never expected. Her voice trembled with emotion. I found you. And I found that love doesn't ask permission. It simply exists, defying logic and biology and distance. Love, Marcus repeated, the word feeling both foreign and perfect on his tongue. Love, Velena confirmed. But love also means wanting what's best for the other person. You need to heal, Marcus. To forgive yourself for Helios Station. To learn that trusting people doesn't mean losing them. I trust you. I know. That's why I'm asking you to trust me now. Go to New Anchorage. Do your work. Become whole again. She pressed her forehead to his in that gesture they'd shared in the shelter. If what we have is real, distance won't diminish it. And if it is real, Marcus asked, his voice rough with suppressed emotion, then we'll find our way back to each other. Somehow, their goodbye kiss was soft, bittersweet. When Velena finally pulled away and walked toward her ship, Marcus felt like something vital was being torn from his chest. He watched her vessel disappear into the starfield and stood there long after it was gone. On the transport to New Anchorage, Marcus stared out the viewport. For 3 years he'd been numb, going through motions. Then Velena had crashed into his life like a comet, breaking through his defenses, teaching him to feel again. Now he had a choice: return to his comfortable isolation, or be brave enough to fight for something more. By the time his ship reached New Anchorage, Marcus Hale had made his decision. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the crystal gardens of Sarath, feeling completely out of place. The trees around him hummed with resonant frequencies, their translucent branches catching and bending light into rainbows. The air itself seemed alive with soft harmonics. Every breath felt like inhaling music. He'd spent those 3 months working on New Anchorage. But every spare moment was devoted to learning everything about Sorath culture, language, and customs. He'd requested a formal transfer to the Interspecies Engineering Exchange Program. He'd navigated bureaucratic nightmares, filled out hundreds of forms, and endured medical examinations to ensure human biology could handle Sorath's unique environment, all for a woman who might not even want him here. You're creating quite a stir. Human. The voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to find an elder Sorath, his skin's bioluminescence dimmed with age. We rarely receive visitors who aren't diplomats or traitors. I'm here for. We know why you're here. The entire city knows. The human who captured our diplomat's heart. The elder's expression was unreadable. Valina is in council chambers, facing considerable opposition. Because of me. Because she refuses to deny her feelings for you. There are those who believe such connections between species are ... inappropriate, dangerous to our cultural purity. The elder paused. I am not among them. My daughter mated with a human 20 cycles ago. They have 2 beautiful children who bridge our worlds. But the conservative faction is strong. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted from the central plaza. He followed the sound to find a crowd gathered before the council hall. On the steps stood Valina, facing a row of stern-looking officials. Her voice carried clearly, those harmonics resonating through the air. For generations, we've prided ourselves on our wisdom, our enlightenment. We joined the galactic community preaching unity and understanding. Yet when one of our own dares to love someone different, you call it scandal? It's not about love, one council member argued. It's about compatibility. Humans and Sorath cannot bond properly. Their biology, their psychology, their very essence is incompatible with ours. Then explain how I feel. Valina's skin blazed with light, her emotion making her radiant. Explain how a human taught me more about connection and trust in weeks than years of diplomatic training. Explain how he held me when I fell apart and made me stronger. Is that incompatible? Marcus pushed through the crowd. Valina. She turned, her eyes widening. Marcus. But you're supposed to be where I belong, he finished, reaching the steps. And I belong wherever you are. The crowd murmured. The council members looked shocked, but Marcus only had eyes for Valina. I spent 3 years alone, convinced that caring about anyone was a weakness. That trust led only to loss. He climbed the steps toward her. Then I met you. You crashed into my carefully ordered life and shattered every wall I'd built. You made me feel again, made me hope again, made me love again. He reached her, taking her hands in his. The familiar electric tingle of her touch grounded him. I know I'm not Sorath. I can't sing like you or glow like you. I'm just a human engineer with too many scars and a talent for fixing broken things. Marcus smiled. But I'm very good at fixing broken things. And if your people think we can't work, I'm here to prove them wrong. Like we proved everyone wrong on Epsilon 7. Tears streamed down Valina's face, each one catching the light like diamonds. You fool? You beautiful, stubborn fool. Do you have any idea what you're giving up? Nothing that matters more than you. The crowd erupted in mixed reactions. Some cheered. Others protested. But Valina pulled Marcus into a kiss that silenced them all. It was deeper than their first, more certain. A declaration. When they broke apart, one of the younger council members stood. If Valina is willing to face controversy for this human, then I move we grant him residency status. Let their bond prove itself through time and action. Seconded, another called, then another. The conservative faction tried to argue, but the tide had turned. Love, it seemed, was its own form of diplomacy. The following months were challenging. Marcus adapted to Sorath's unique environment, learning to hear the subtle frequencies that carried meaning for Valina's people. He worked with Sorath engineers, incorporating human practical techniques with their elegant resonant technologies. His bluntness sometimes clashed with their harmonious approach, but more often it brought fresh perspectives. Valina continued her diplomatic work, but now Marcus accompanied her. Their partnership became legendary. The human who saw problems as puzzles to solve, and the Sarath who saw beings as frequencies to harmonize. Together, they resolved conflicts that had seemed impossible. One evening, they stood in the crystal gardens where Marcus had first arrived. The trees sang their evening song, and Valina's hand was warm in his. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Leaving your world behind." Marcus looked at her, this impossible, beautiful being who'd changed everything. "I didn't leave my world behind. I found a new one. One big enough to hold both our peoples and all the others. One where love doesn't ask permission or follow rules." "We've certainly proven that," Valina laughed, that musical sound he'd never tire of hearing. "The council's starting to come around. I heard Elder Kareth actually use the word beautiful to describe human-Soroth partnerships. Progress." Valina leaned into him. "Though some still think we're mad? Are they wrong? Perhaps not. Perhaps love is a form of madness. A beautiful, necessary madness that makes us brave enough to cross any distance, break any barrier." She turned to face him fully. "You know what tomorrow is? The anniversary of Epsilon 7. 1 year since we met. Since a stubborn human and a desperate Soroth diplomat were thrown together and changed each other's lives forever." Valina's eyes held entire galaxies. "Thank you, Marcus Hale, for being brave enough to break down walls. Both yours and ours. Thank you for teaching me that some things are worth the risk of loss. Worth everything." They kissed as the crystal trees sang around them, their harmonics blending with the beating of two hearts that had found their rhythm together, two beings from different worlds, proving that love needed no translation. In the distance, both human and Soroth children played together, their laughter a promise of the future. A future where differences weren't barriers but bridges, where two species could work together, love together, build together where they said humans and aliens couldn't work together. But a pair of stubborn souls proved everyone wrong, and continued proving them wrong one day at a time, together.